In this video, we need to look at the factors affecting energy intake and energy expenditure. Because there's a lot of different things that go into how your energy comes in and how your energy goes out of your body. And it's not just as simple as what the nutrients are either. So we'll have to take a look. Looking at the intake of energy, there's many different factors that can impact that. Let's first start off with the physiology of things. If we look at the physiology, we have the hypothalamus. That's a gland up in the brain. Now the hypothalamus is going to be the main control center for your appetite. So it's going to tell you from a hormonal and a nervous input standpoint when you're hungry or when you're full. So what's happening is you're going to receive signals up in the hypothalamus from both chemical and mechanical messengers. So it's going to be looking at things that are down in the rest of the GI tract and then relay those signals up the nervous system and into the hypothalamus. So when you start to think of things like hunger pains or that growling sound you hear in the stomach, which, by the way, that growling sound is actually called bulbarygmy. It's kind of an interesting little word there. But bulbarygmy is the growling of your stomach. What's actually causing that growling sound is your stomach is contracting when it's empty. So your stomach kind of growls as it's empty, contracting, and realizing you need some food in there. It's telling you it's hungry. But on the flip side, if the stomach is full, the stomach stretches a little bit. That stretching is going to send signals up to the hypothalamus to say, hey, you know what? We're full. Stop eating. The only catch there is those signals take a little bit of time, so you got to give yourself time. You don't want to rush eating. That 10-minute meal doesn't give enough time for your brain to realize, hey, I'm kind of full at this point. So sometimes slowing down while eating can help that. All right, so hypothalamus, one physiological way that you affect the energy intake. Another physiological way that affects the intake of energy is adipose or fat tissue. Now, adipose itself is going to produce a hormone called leptin. This hormone leptin is going to tell your body when you're in a positive energy state. That means it lets you know that, hey, we've got enough energy. We're good. Take it easy. Now, they thought when they first figured this out, scientists were like, hey, this is a great weight loss drug. And it didn't quite pan out. They found out in later research that in individuals that are obese, leptin, or a synthetic variation thereof, has little or no effect. So, unfortunately, that wasn't the cure or the help they thought for the epidemic of obesity. Instead, though, in recent times, and I'll say recent as in 5-10 years, because when you start having different pharmaceuticals going through research, it takes years, sometimes decades, to get to market. They've been experimenting more and starting to utilize biological different drugs. These different biologicals are meant to mimic the way your GI tract secretes hormones. By mimicking these biologicals from the hormones in your stomach, your GI tract slows down. And by slowing down, the food will stay in the GI tract longer, making you feel fuller longer. So there are some interesting new kind of biological agents that they're experimenting with and starting to bring to market to use as weight loss drugs, even though they originally were looked at as diabetes-based drugs. So a lot of times things start one way and kind of morph into something else that's also beneficial. All right, let's keep moving on though. Nutrient levels in your blood. Now, as long as you're having a balanced diet, you have all the nutrients you need. But sometimes if certain nutrients are in deficit or in too much, you got way too much of this nutrients, then what can happen is those nutrient balances can impact the hypothalamus. Maybe you might have a craving for something salty or something sweet. It could be based on what you're having a deficit of in your nutrients. So your body's having this physiological response to say, hey, you know what? We need more of this to balance out. And I say could because that's not the rationale behind every craving. Sometimes people just want things because they like the taste of them. So there is a physiological back there, but not for every answer. Nutrition-wise, we mentioned the nutrient levels, but what happens if you're undernutrient or overnutrient in general? Well, those can also impact hormone levels. And by impacting the hormone levels, it can make it very hard to gain or lose weight. It just kind of keeps you right where you're at. And then, of course, there's always genetics. Genetics is going to play a part in a little bit of how things play out. Now, they're not exactly sure how much this works or how much it plays a part in, but a lot of the research that's coming out is saying that it's a small part, but environmental seems to be more of a part. What you're exposed to, what you're given, what's around you and available. That seems to have a larger impact on your energy intake and how you ingest it. Mix in with that psychological and behavioral factors, things like perception of what's good. Depending where you live, one food might be perceived as a really good food to eat, while someplace else might have a different food that's really good. So you can start having different takes on what is healthy, different takes on what is nutritious, but different takes on also what tastes good. And that's the biggest one. Especially if you're looking at the north or south of the US, for example. You'll have very different cooking styles, north versus south, quite often. And that also impacts what people think tastes good. Mix in then societal influences, the size of the portion, or how much fast food is dominating the area. Those can all impact the intake of energy. Now, that increasing portion size and that fast food dominating so much of the market, that isn't necessarily a good thing to impact energy intake, but it does have an undoubtable impact on energy intake. Let's flip over, go to expenditure. Looking at energy expenditure, what affects energy expenditure? Well, this is going to be unique because just like the intake of what your choices are, your expenditure of how your body uses energy is also unique to yourself. Because everyone's body uses energy in a different way. There's no one set everyone uses exactly the same. Yeah, sure, everyone uses ATP, but how do they use it? Which tissues when? How is everything stored? How much is stored? That's variable. So there's a couple theories. One theory is the idea of a set point. Basically, your body has a set point. And everything you do, your energy, balances up or down based on that set point. Which means if you have extra energy intake, it still eventually bounces back down to the set point. You have a deficit, and it bounces up to that set point. So it pretty much tells your body that you're going to be here, and it doesn't matter if you go up or down, you're going to come back to that same point. Now, is this proven for sure? No. It's just one theory, one idea that scientists are looking at exploring. Another theory or idea is the settling point. Now, in the case of the settling point, it's more looking at the different obesogenics that are around you and what's influencing that. Because do you have an increased availability to food? That means you eat more. Do you have an increased availability to TV and screen time? You're exposed to more advertising for fast food, for example. They're saying that these things will create these settling points, and you'll settle higher and higher and higher if exposed to negative ones like increased food, not healthy food, increased screens. Or if the reverse of that, you don't have enough food, you don't have all this extra screen time, you don't have ready availability to fast food, that settling point will go down. So it's looking at all the factors around you as far as how does it shape your energy expenditure. Because the more you're looking at these things, the more you see them, how is the energy being processed and how much do you have to give off and use and work. And of course, you have to come back to genetics. Genetics is still a part because it takes how your body utilizes energy. How is your metabolism set? How fast do you burn off? What's your body's composition of muscle compared to fat? Those all play a part, as well as how you expend your energy. Then other things like sedentary lifestyle versus an active lifestyle. Depending on what your lifestyle is, if it's more sedentary, that's more weight gain because you're not utilizing the energy you ingest. They say that even 5 minutes per hour, just to get up and walk around, is going to help to reduce body weight because it just gets the heart moving a little more, gets the blood flowing a little bit more, and helps to reduce the pure sedentary effect. Excessive screen time with being sedentary. Another issue considering it's also dealing with more exposure to the fast food industry, more exposure to not healthy food types because they're constantly advertising, trying to collect all that money and people buy them. We're talking huge billion-dollar industries here, all about trying to get the consumer to purchase. Well, on the flip side, sedentary is going to be an active lifestyle. If you're an active lifestyle, working out, exercising, or simply just going for a bike ride, going for a walk, these all will increase energy expenditure and help the overall health of the body. So depending on which lifestyle it is, depends on how you expend the energy. Societal has impacts. The amount of transportation we have, the amount of transit we have, how easy it is from point A to point B without walking, without biking. Now, could you walk or bike? Maybe. Takes more time, and sometimes we don't have the time for that. Again, choices of what we're doing. Office jobs, high stress positions, long hours. All of this societal impact reduce the amount of time you have for yourself to exercise or get out and move or get physical in doing something. We also have to look at socioeconomic, depending on where one lives and what their means are at that point. Certain locations just aren't the safest to be out walking sometimes for individuals. Certain locations, depending on the socioeconomic impact, might not have easy access to fitness clubs, might not have easy access to parks or exercise equipment. So again, there's all these different factors that could make an impact. On the flip side, some people have a higher socioeconomic. It's easier to get access to health clubs, easier to go out for a walk in a safer environment, easier to have the time to spend on your personal exercise. But no matter how you're expending your energy, if you don't balance the intake and the expenditure of energy, you can run into health risks. Because if the intake is higher than the expenditure, so you take in more than you use, then your health risks become more problematic. Overweight and obese has many more problems than someone that's a little bit underweight. You can look into chronic diseases, things along the line of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, liver disease, gallbladder disease, potentiality of strokes, hormone imbalances. I mean, the list keeps going and going and going for all these risk factors because of obesity and overweight. And if someone is overweight earlier in life, we're unfortunately in society, we're seeing a trend where there's more obesity occurring in children. That means the body is experiencing these stresses earlier and earlier in life. So that causes these chronic diseases to occur earlier in life for these individuals. Puts more of a strain on society, trying to help these individuals from a medical standpoint as well. So it's about trying to balance the intake with the expenditure. And the best way to figure this out is to try an experiment. See how things work. Are you hungry? Do you really need to eat that much? Eat less, eat more, change how you eat. Exercise. I mean, there's so many variables to try. The key is don't get overwhelmed. If you think there's something that might need to be changed, try one thing. Just try one little change and see how it works. If it seems to be working, try another one. Small changes to balance your intake and expenditure of energy can help out. Trying to tackle some of these factors affecting it can also help. So nutrition. A lot of things can impact it on the outside besides the physical nutrients themselves. Until the next video.